What's up, Motocross Action? I'm Josh Mosiman, and in this video, we're testing Mike Alessi's 2020 World Two-Stroke Championship winning YZ325. Once a racer, always a racer. It's in our blood. Even at 32 years old, Mike Alessi still enjoys building bikes and going racing with his dad, Tony. But Mike's racing schedule is different now from the previous 27 years of his racing career. Instead of doing AMA Supercross and Motocross full-time, Mike has transitioned into being a part-time racer. He picks and chooses which events he wants to race. Although it looked different then, this bike was first seen at the 2019 Monster Cup Supercross, where Mike became the first two-stroke rider to qualify for a Supercross-style 450 main event in the modern four-stroke era. Next on the to-do list for this bike was the 2020 Wiseco World Two-Stroke Motocross Championship. Mike had raced this event a few times before and won it in 2016. After dusting off the Yamaha YZ325 and transforming it from Supercross settings to motocross settings, Mike met the MXA Wrecking crew at Glen Helen just 1 week before the big race. Before we jumped on his bike, Mike Alessi made sure that it was nice and warm for us. With the Eddie Sanders Racing big bore kit using a steel liner in the cylinder, we were instructed to be extra patient while the two metals warmed up to each other before we hit the track. On the first lap, the MXA test riders noticed a handful of oddball traits on Mike's YZ325. His mica metal handlebars were cut down to be skinnier than stock, his levers were high, like above the handlebar high, and his rear brake was so far up that we thought there was something wrong with it. When we asked about the wild rear brake position, Mike gave us a suspension tutorial and explained that the shock doesn't like to move when the rear brake is engaged, but it works great when the wheel is free to roll unhindered. Mike said that he puts his pedal high just to keep himself from using it. He said that he wants to ride with as little rear brake as possible, so that it's basically just there in case of emergency. This tactic is understandable on a four-stroke where there's engine braking, but on a freewheeling two-stroke, it seemed a little sketchy. Our test riders did their best to ride with less rear brake for the day, and we already knew this technique would work well, but it was still a challenge to apply moderate pressure without brake sliding into corners. On the track, the Eddie Sanders Racing YZ325 engine vibrated our hands and feet like crazy, but the power was strong and smooth and never signed off. Chad Braun from XPR had worked with Mike Alessi previously, and he currently still works with Mike's dad, Tony, developing ECU map settings and building engines for the Moto Concepts Honda team. So Mike asked XPR to give him a special map for the YZ325 two-stroke that would give the big bore power a longer pull. With this map, the MXA test riders felt confident on the track. The YZ325 was fast and responsive, but thankfully it didn't explode out of corners in a way that pulled our arms out of their sockets. It was snappy on the bottom and smooth through the mid-range. The ESR big bore kit comes in two different versions. There's a standard $650 YZ325 big bore kit, and then there's the $799 YZ325 CEO big bore kit. Not only does the ESR setup cost less than a complete YZ250 top end rebuild, it bolts on just as easily as doing a top end rebuild, and it comes with everything needed, including the ESR cylinder, which is manufactured in-house, the head, piston with rings and clips, ESR's custom power valve, base gasket, reed gasket, head O-ring set, nuts, and washers. Mike was even able to run the stock carburetor with stock YZ250 jetting on his 2018 Yamaha big bore. The only difference between the $650 standard and the $799 CEO kit is that the CEO kit is more race specific, using a dished piston to give the engine a wider power band. The ESR 325 engine has a strong hit in its original form, and with ESR's pipe, which is sold separately for $369, you're able to fine-tune the power to get more bottom or more top-end power with a different exhaust port insert that mounts between the pipe and exhaust port. Although there are multiple exhaust port inserts to choose from, Mike chose to go with the standard ESR pipe insert, XPR mapping, a DEP silencer, V-Force 3 reed valve, a Recluse torque drive clutch with the stiffer red clutch springs, stock YZ250 flywheel, an ultra low 1550 gear ratio, which is equivalent to 1343, all to tailor the power curve into something he felt confident enough to ride on for two 20-minute plus 1 lap motos at Glen Helen. ESR was able to keep the price down on its YZ325 big bore kit by designing its own custom power valve that's regulated by exhaust pressure instead of traditional linkage and governor design. With this design, Eddie Sanders Racing is able to go bigger when boring out the cylinder and doesn't have to worry about manufacturing all the standard Yamaha YPVS power valve parts to compensate. Big bore engines are great for the ultra long start and steep uphills at Glen Helen, and the World 2-Stroke Pro Class has no rules on what displacement a rider can run. A fast engine isn't worth much though without suspension to ensure that the rider can hold on to the bike as he heads back down the hills. Mike Alessi has a long-standing relationship with Racetech, and for his Yamaha YZ325, he handed Racetech a stock YZ250 shock and some very rare Showa A-kit forks for his Yamaha. Mike bought these ultra rare forks from an unnamed individual and then handed the components over to Racetech so they could put in his personalized setting. On the track, the suspension worked like a dream for the MXA test riders. We didn't have to adjust any clickers, and Mike Alessi's sag actually worked perfect for our pro level test riders. One word that came to mind while hitting bumps and landing from jumps was predictable. The best bike is the one that works naturally and doesn't require a special technique to go fast on. In short, it does what it's supposed to without any surprises. And that's how we felt about Mike's ultra rare Showa A-kit Yamaha forks and stock YZ250 shock tuned by Racetech. Beyond the suspension, we love the precise feel of the oversized Honda CRF front brake. Yes, you heard that right. Mike switched out his Yamaha's Nissan Master Cylinder for the 2005 Honda CRF 450 version. He upgraded the stock 270mm front brake rotor to a 280mm Moto Stuff rotor and used an arc leather. Mike was quiet about his front brake, waiting to see if MXA would notice his little secret. We did. Mike used Pro Circuit triple clamps with a slightly steeper offset to help the YZ325 turn at the Las Vegas Monster Cup, and, surprisingly enough, he kept them on once he switched over to outdoor suspension. Behind the Pro Circuit clamps was an oversized R-Tech fuel tank, and to clean up the rest of the bikes, UFO provided its YZ250 Restyle plastic kit in black, and it was covered in yellow and gray Blenzall stickers made by Moto Graphics. A Guts seat cover and ultra sharp flow foot pegs helped Mike stick to the bike, and the rubber that met the road for Mike Alessi's YZ325 was a Dunlop MX33 front tire and MX52 rear tire. Mike likes the predictable feel of the MX33 on the front wheel, and he felt that the intermediate hard terrain MX52 tire would work best on the rear at Glen Helen. The tires were mounted onto DID STX rims with tight hubs, and to finish the bike off, Mike ran FCP Racing titanium foot peg pins and a Works Connection pull shot device. Besides the high levels of vibration caused by the big bore piston, Mike Alessi's 2020 World 2-Stroke Championship race bike was a blast to ride, and it proved its worth when the gate dropped at Glen Helen. Mike lined up next to 39 other Open Pro Class 2-strokes, and he went on to win with a 2-1 overall moto score on a very long and very rough Glen Helen National track. The course design for the 2-stroke National spanned all the way onto the upper REM track with a layout that resembled what the AMA Nationals used to look like before MX Sports started limiting the length of the national tracks. With a $2,700 first place purse money, $1,000 in whole shot money, a win bonus from Blenzall and his other sponsors, along with a $20,000 win bonus from ESR, Mike Alessi was able to walk away from the World 2-Stroke Championships with a smile on his face and an extra $30,000 in his bank account. Overall, the MXA Wrecking crew had a blast hanging out with Mike and Tony Alessi at Glen Helen for the day, and we thoroughly enjoyed our time with Mike's Yamaha YZ325 2-stroke. So for more information on this bike and for more information on our two-stroke builds, make sure to check out motocrossactionmag.com. Be sure to subscribe to the magazine on our website or by picking one up at your local grocery store as well. And to stay up to date with our latest videos, make sure to click that subscribe button on YouTube. And wait, before you go, click the thumbnails now to see some of our latest videos.